attorneys that we had worked with that had went to the sites. One was a federal attorney, that the sites were legal, and yet I was not allowed to use any of this evidence in federal court.
Right, so there's the point that needs to be made. There was no other. His excuse is not an accurate excuse for why he did that. All right, so this is the record.
I will enforce the law and do follow the will of the people.
It certainly hasn't been his track record.
Lie. He's going around to the Democratic clubs lying to them.
Of course he is.
Right now.
Because he doesn't have a good answer. He wouldn't even respond as to how he personally voted on the issue, which is complete bullshit.
Yeah.
And the fact that he lacks even that basic amount of transparency should be a red flag for anybody.
I got a couple comments about it. Let's listen to him. This is the Attorney General candidate, Pat Miles, on the issue of marijuana when he was on the Tim Skubik show, and unavailable. Where'd that go?
He really did make a fool of himself on that, and I think he'll continue to, because he doesn't have a good retort to the objection.
On the other hand, Dana Nessel is the person for us. She's a Democrat running for Attorney General, and she has unequivocally stated that this persecution of medical marijuana patients is wrong.
Hello, I'm Simon Whistler. You're watching Top 10.
Simon Whistler. Dana is not just a champion for marijuana patients, but or just marijuana legalization in general, but she's truly a defender of the underdog, and here we go. This is the segment.
Is that a mess? Is that medical marijuana? Is that a mess?
The system has been a mess, of the medical marijuana system in Michigan.
Did you help to make it a mess by voting yes?
Did I help by voting yes on the medical marijuana? I think what was on that ballot was not real clear to a lot of people in terms of that it would be maybe prescribed by a physician through a pharmacy and the like, and that's not. But again, as you mentioned earlier, the federal law is not compatible right now with the state law, and that's what makes it very difficult and makes it a mess too.
Did you vote yes on it?
I'm not going to talk about my personal voting record on that issue, but what I will say is that what makes it very challenging is we have two different systems right now. We have a federal system and a state system, and we're seeing this incompatibility that marijuana today is much different than the marijuana from the 60s. The THC level, the active psychoactive ingredient that gets people high in the 60s that people were smoking back then, was 1.6% THC. The marijuana people are smoking today is well over 12%. So the marijuana today is 10 times more potent than it was back in the 60s. And for the edibles, the medibles, where you distill it down into a rosin and make it into food, that can be 80 to 90% THC. So if you have a gummy bear, which very few people can eat just one, I know Tim can, but all of us don't have that discipline. The amount of gummy bear that's medical marijuana to get a man, an adult male high, is just the ear.
Just the ear,
just the
Michael.
Ear. You'd have to tear off the ear, and that would get you high. So if once you popped a few of those in your mouth, by the time it gets through your system, through your stomach, again, because you're ingesting through your stomach, you don't even realize how high you are, and that's how people get overdose.
Does the state
That's how people get overdose.
Legalizing marijuana and wait for the federal government to deal with it?
Well, the people are certainly getting out ahead of the federal government by virtue of what they may or may not vote for in these referendum votes statewide. And so, let's be frank, the federal government has been very slow on this. I mean, there's been a lot of analysis by the DEA and by the FDA to see whether or not marijuana has a medicinal benefit, and so to wait for that, may be more prudent, because then we would know what the law should be. But you see, we live in a republic democracy, and the people of the states are saying we want to move ahead with this in a lot of states.
Counselor, with all due respect, there's going to be some of your critics who are going to watch your performance here on two issues. You refuse to take a point, saying it's your personal vote, which it clearly is. They're going to say, you know what, this guy was afraid to take a stance because it would offend his liberal base, and he would also lose conservative votes, and therefore, for political reason, he's punting.
Well, I've never been one to avoid a difficult political position. When I ran for Congress in 2010, again,
well,
I ran as a Democrat.
Well,
okay, I'm taking what I'm saying. Well, critics can say what they want to say, but what I'm saying.
All right, so I just let it go on a little bit, just taking notes of how I was going to go off on how outrageous some of these comments are. We're going to return to that because I do understand, according to Jim, we've got our next Attorney General on. Please welcome Dana Nessel, if it's true.
Hey, how are you?
Yes.
Wow, it is
I like
really
that introduction.
Fantastic. We're really excited. Thanks for calling. I know you're in between campaigning tonight out there on the trail and bringing people around to vote for you. Give us a quick background. What have you been up to tonight and how you're being received, if you would?
Well, let's see. Well, it was a long day. We were all over the place. But I'm coming right now from Clinton County, coming back downstate. And, I will say this. One of the big surprises for me during the course of the campaign is the reaction of senior citizens to marijuana-related issues. And I was actually really surprised. I thought that when I would go to these events, they'd want to talk about, nursing homes, elder care, and abuse and exploitation of seniors. But what I'm finding in a lot of different areas is their number one issue is their inability to access medical marijuana, because some people live in counties where all the dispensaries have been shut down, they don't have a caregiver, and they have no way to access their medicine. And frankly, I was surprised by it, but I see now that the need is greater than ever than to make certain that people can access their medicine and they have the ability to do it safely and easily so that they can treat their medical conditions.
And this, of course, is a really important point, and as you know, we've been queuing up, and I was ready to rant for a while, but I'm sure, and I can say all the things you may not want to say, I understand politically, but let's talk a little bit about your opponent, Pat Miles, and his performance so far on this issue. To the extent that you're trying to be diplomatic, what are your thoughts so far on this issue, the medical marijuana?
So I'm going to be, I guess I will be undiplomatic, and I will say this. One of the biggest reasons why I decided to throw my hat in and file was because I knew that that Pat Miles was planning to run, and that there were a lot of people in the party that were planning on supporting him, or at least I had heard that at that time. And I knew that he had what I considered to be a very, poor track record on marijuana. So as I understood it, he opposed not only recreational marijuana, but also medical marijuana. And I was aware of some of the prosecutions that he had been involved in the Western District. And it was really what influenced me to decide to run, because I have felt for a very long time that marijuana should be legalized. I'm disgusted by the hundreds of millions of dollars that our state has wasted in prosecuting marijuana offenses. And frankly, I just don't want to see good people going to jail or prison anymore and having their lives upended and having all of their assets stolen from them based on nothing more than marijuana usage or being a caretaker for somebody who needs medical marijuana, who needs their medicine. So it was really important to me that somebody run for this office that had respect for the proposal that was passed in 2008 and who didn't want to see the war on marijuana continue. And that is one of the big reasons that I decided to run.
Well, that is an important reason. We know the significance that our current Attorney General had on the enforcement or public, making the medical marijuana a public safety issue instead of a public health issue. But do you know what else really stands out? And you can appreciate this just as a lawyer, a member of the bar that realizes that the profession at times is under assault. But we as attorneys, honor the profession and don't want other lawyers, bringing ill will to it. We have an obligation to call out, behavior that would be unbecoming to the practice as an ethical obligation. And what I'm observing of this Pat Miles is that he is flat out lying. And this is something that's not acceptable anywhere, but certainly not to the bar. And, we're living in times right now where there's so much false activity taking place in the White House.
Him?
And the lying, and I always used to joke, like if Trump ever had to come into court and you could use the transcripts from his statements, I know they're not under oath, but he wouldn't make it a day. He'd be impeached. He wouldn't know what to say in front of a jury, under that circumstance. And that means I'm making that point, like the judicial system calls out that BS. And here we have Pat Miles with facts that just totally make it clear that he will say anything. Is a real disservice to the profession and to the suggestion that he could be honorable in as an attorney general. It's really offensive.
Well, I will say this just about myself personally and how I decided to run for this office. And you know what? There may be a lot of political strategists that don't subscribe to this, and I've been advised otherwise. But you know what, Mike? We've appeared before many of the same judges over the course of decades of our career, right? And, it's funny to me, but the notion that you would pivot to another issue if you are asked a hard question that you don't want to answer, or just not answer the question at all, is sort of antithetical to what we've learned as attorneys, I think. And I decided I'm not going to change my approach just because I'm running for public office. And I'll just tell people, and I go places sometimes where people are not thrilled with the fact that I am the first candidate to run for Attorney General in the state of Michigan that, endorses the legalization of marijuana, the proper regulation, taxation, and so forth of marijuana. But I just say it how it is. And what I want people to know about my candidacy, at least, is you ask me a question, I will give you an answer. And you might not like my answer, but it's not going to change what I tell you. If you don't want to vote for me because you disagree with my policies and my positions, that's fine, but at least you'll know where I stand. And I think a lot of people will respect that. Even if they don't agree with me on everything, they will respect the fact that I'm being intellectually honest. And if more people than not disagree with my positions, then I guess I don't deserve to win anyway, right?
Well, I think in today's political age, I think that it's very rare that people are, committed and upfront and explain it whether you like it or not. We can disagree, we can debate it. That's the whole purpose of it. That's the purpose of the discourse. You make a really important point as I want to show the lack of integrity of the way that he's been campaigning. The point you're making that if you're standing before a judge and you want to argue, a certain point, the judge says, I'm not interested in that. Tell me the answer to this question, counsel. You don't say, I'm going to go back to talking about what I wanted to talk about. You're going to have to answer the person. That's
right.
The point you're making here. He's not responding. He's dodging the answers and the questions on issues that but it's to tell the story. It's to explain your position. And if you really step back and look at why is he so dishonest on this particular issue?
Because he knows it is going to kill him.
Well, I even thought of a better excuse for him. He could have said, look, at the time that we were doing the Forsman prosecution and Ryan Bassor, we know, and other people from that Lansing 7, the holder hadn't changed the policy where they were just going to charge they weren't going to charge the mandatory minimum. That didn't happen until 2014. He could have said, at the time that those prosecutors, a few that we did, but once Holder changed, he had all kinds of things that he could have said to really honestly explain the situation, not even be accountable. He could have said, well, we were following the Obama administration at the time, whatever. But he didn't. He just flat out lied. And you can speculate on why it is, but I mean, clearly he knows that if he answered honestly, it would be a bad position to be in. He's clearly knows that he's.
Why is that? Why? I mean, if he wanted to be honest, he could have just said, "You know what? I don't support marijuana legalization in any form, but if it's the people's will, then I will implement it as written." And then everybody's going to attack him on the track record that he's had and the claims that he's made that he doesn't prosecute state compliant patients and caregivers.
Yeah, well, but this is another reason why. I mean, we've seen this from Bill Schuette. You know, I think that knowing a person's basic philosophy on certain issues, it does help you understand how they plan to implement the law or enforce the law. And so, you know, presuming that marijuana